price elasticity as a concept all about? Is it clear? If a product has many substitutes, it will be towards elastic or inelastic? Another question. GJ Prasad, normally I am very good. Only the thing is, with this technology I become bad. If you had been sitting in front of me and I would have explaining it on the board, then I mean no one can stop you from becoming an economist. So that is the problem with me. This technology actually hampers my delivery also at times. Yeah, the question is, it will be elastic. If a product has many substitutes, people will easily switch to other substitutes if the price is increased. So it will be towards elastic side. If a product is towards a necessity side, then it will be towards inelastic side. So there are various factors which can reflect upon the elasticity of a product. For example, a proportion of income is spent on commodity. That is like, for example, if you talk about soft drinks and such products on which our income from which our income is hardly affected, these kind of products are towards inelastic side. Because see, if I am buying a soft drink at 10 rupees, I am buying the same soft drink at 11 rupees, it will not matter much to me. Okay, unless and until we say that another soft drink remains at 10 rupees and this one is at 11 rupees, and if all the soft drinks are sold at 11 rupees, our demand pattern will not change much. So the percentage of income we are spending on the product also has an impact on elasticity. Time factor also, as I explained you for petrol and gasoline, long run and short run demand can be changed. In short run, petrol is inelastic, in long run it is elastic. And another thing is range of alternative uses of the commodity, that is products like, for example, electricity. Okay, now these are the products which can be used for various other purposes apart from only what purpose we use. So if their prices come down, people will start using it much for the alternative purposes, and that is why it is towards elastic side. Okay, so that is all about the discussion for elasticity. Then we will come to another concept which is also important once we go deeper into elasticity. What is total revenue? I mean, elasticity we have discussed as a concept. Next we are going to have more of a practical view, what implications elasticity has on the sales of an organization. That is also important to be understood. So to understand the implications of elasticity on sales and revenue, we will start off our discussion with what is total revenue. Yeah, Sindhi, Rusi, Masood, Ahmed, yes. What is your question? Ask your question. I'll take 2 minutes. See, it is in India, it is the government which is responsible for the prices of this product in the market. People cannot change their habits in one day or in a month's time. It is the government which does it. See, the petrol prices is in India are not driven by demand and supply. These are driven by what government decides to do with them. Okay, so we are finally talking about the price, whether it is due to demand and supply or by government, that is immaterial for us. Okay, what is the cause of the price increase or decrease is immaterial. What we are analyzing here is how that price change affects the demand. Okay, so what is total revenue? You can have a look at your books also. Yeah, What is total revenue? This we have already done. Okay, the question is what is total revenue? You must be talking about total revenue is going up, revenue is going down. In our organization, this is a very common terminology that is used. What is total revenue? Okay, total sales, absolutely correct. Price into quantity is what we term as total revenue. Okay, now when we talk about say total revenue, here it is nothing but you are all are absolutely correct, total sales or price into quantity. But in economics, apart from this concept of total revenue, we are going to use two other concepts as well. One is average revenue, another one is marginal revenue. Now average revenue is nothing but total revenue upon the quantity that is sold in the market. So what will be average revenue? Average revenue is total revenue upon the quantity sold in the market. So what is average revenue? Not the cost, it is the price. Cost is what you incur on inputs. Price is what is the price of the product in the market. Please do not get confused. It is a very important thing. Okay. Average revenue is total revenue upon quantity. That is nothing but the price. Am I right? Am I right? Average revenue is, see what we term as average. If I have to calculate average age, it is I have to calculate all the ages upon the number of people that I have used for calculating the total age. It is just the same concept. Average age, average height, average milk in liters, कुछ भी हो सकता है. Yeah, overall upon total numbers of units that have been used in this. So average revenue is total revenue upon quantity. Is it clear now? Is it price? Is it price? P into Q upon Q. Is it price? Question to you guys. Is it price? Not average price, it is price. Average revenue is nothing but price. This is a very important concept because we will be using the same concept in market structures also. Okay, so please do not forget these concepts. When I am going to take it forward, I am going to use these concepts later on. Okay, then total revenue is okay, average revenue is okay, is nothing but the price. What can be marginal revenue? Marginal revenue or marginal concept in economics is a very important concept. It is used in all the topics that we are going to cover up. See, marginal revenue means whenever there is one extra quantity sold in the market, the changes it brings in the revenue is known as marginal revenue. For example, you all can see this slide out here, quantity and price. We say when 10 units were sold and the price was 10 rupees, total revenue was 100 rupees. Quantity, 11 quantities sold, price remains the same, 10 rupees, and total revenue goes to 110 rupees. As per marginal revenue, it is that whenever there is one extra unit sold in the market, the change in the total revenue from 100 to 110 is what we term as marginal revenue. Is marginal revenue clear? Marginal revenue is 10 in this example, not 0. It is whenever one extra unit 10 units to 11 units is sold in the market, the change in the total revenue from 100 to 110 is known as marginal revenue. It is 10. Is it clear, everybody? Okay. Now, the formula for marginal revenue is, you can write down in your notebooks. It is very important. Write it down in your notebooks. I have not written it anywhere. See, we consider total revenue is equal to function of quantity, number 1. So write down in your notebooks or in your books only, here only you can write, total revenue is equal to function of quantity. And the formula for marginal revenue, write down MR is equal to delta TR upon delta Q. Delta TR upon delta Q. Now those who have their books with them, please come to page number 100. Do you see this expression of marginal revenue, delta TR upon delta Q? It has been written in the differential format out here. Okay. When DQ is always 1, then we'll only calculate change in the total revenue. Is these first two equations that I have written for those who are from non-mathematical background? Those who understand mathematics, they can try and understand this logic. Those who are from engineering and mathematics background, please focus on page number 100. Marginal revenue relationship, and there is a small derivation that has been done, as you can see. Those who do not understand mathematics, they focus on the slide. That's all. You understand mathematics, you read it from the book. If you understand, read it from the book. If you don't, please see this slide. That's all. Are these first two equations clear? From, I am asking to those who are from non-mathematics background. First two equations clear? Yes, Prasad, what is the question? Is first two equations? Yes, that is where, GJ, we need to bring ourselves closer to how marginal revenue is related to elasticity concepts. That is what this brings us closer, ki how marginal revenue is related to price and elasticity. Okay, so for those who can understand the derivations on page number 100, it is fine. For those who do not understand this derivation, after recalculating this equation number 2 that is given on the slide, you will finally come to this conclusion where you say marginal revenue is equal to price into 1 minus 1 upon price elasticity. Okay, now this is a standard equation that is used in economics, and this is standard equation gives us the relationship between marginal revenue, price and elasticity. That is the importance of this equation. Okay, because see, we only not need to know that what is elasticity, we need to know what are the implications of elasticity on revenue and other concepts. Okay, now based on this this data, economists finally analyzed the relationship between total revenue. Is it clear? Is it clear? Okay, so when economists, they they calculated all these values. Now these calculations can be done in various ways by using a continuous function or the data that is given to you. Suppose if price and quantity data is given to us, we can calculate total revenue. Price into quantity, we can calculate average revenue, we can calculate marginal revenue. So if price and quantity data is given to us, we can calculate all these concepts: total revenue, marginal revenue and average revenue concepts. So finally, when these calculations were done, I will not go deep into the calculations today because I don't have time. When these calculations are done, the final depiction is in the form of whatever is being displayed out here on the slide, or you have it in figure number 5.7 in your notebooks. Just take 2 minutes time, have a look at this graph, see what is on the y-axis, what is on the x-axis, what is being depicted, and based on that I am going to ask you certain questions also. Just have a look at it, take 2 minutes time, cool down, thanda pani pijiye, and then have a look at this. This is a very important graphical representation. See, total revenue is parabolic because we say that when prices go up, demand comes down. So when we'll see the final impact on total revenue, then it will be of parabolic nature only. That you can calculate by, let us say, I am not speaking right now, have a look at this graph. Calculate karo TR, price into quantity, it will be parabolic. Have a look at it, have a look at this graph. Don't go into the mathematics for those who do not understand. For those who understand, fine with it. We need to be critics, not the learners out here. We need not have the knowledge, but we should be able to analyze the graphical representations that are given to us. Analyze this for me if you can. Now if you are a manager and you are given this situation, what will be your idea? At which output level would you like to operate? How much quantity you would like to produce given this situation? That is the question. Okay, 49 to 50, yes. Ritesh, around 50. What about everybody else? as managers will look forward to total revenue. Simple clue. Simple clue, as managers we look forward to revenues. What is happening to elasticity, marginal revenue, so on so forth, we are not bothered. Okay, the situation out here gives us this idea that we should operate at around 50 or less than that, that is around 48, as we can observe on the graph, because at this point of time total revenue is maximum, elasticity is equal to 1, that you can see. Okay, and marginal revenue is what is marginal revenue? Yes, it is Sushant, a very good answer to give. What is marginal revenue at around 48 units? No, I am asking about marginal revenue here. Average revenue curve is this price curve, which shows even the elasticity also, because it is nothing but the price curve. No, what is marginal revenue when total revenue is maximum? That is my question. No, no, yes. What is marginal revenue? Yes, Nilesh Kumar has given the correct answer. Ritesh, yes. Is it 0? Can you see the two graphical representations? Can you see this MR curve here? MR is 0 when total revenue is maximum. Okay, everybody else? So are you able to connect to this graphical representation, everybody? Q will be 50, MR is equal to 0, elasticity is equal to 1. This is the best combination where you will get the maximum revenue. Sorry, 48 you can say. Okay, so we say total revenue is maximum when MR is equal to, marginal revenue is equal to 0 and elasticity is equal to 1. That is what is the concept, that is what is the relationship that can help you take your practical decisions when it comes to certain strategies or revenue decisions by the organization. How much should be produced, how it should be produced. When all these aspects have to be taken into consideration, then we can use this relationship. Now, is it clear, everybody? I'll talk a little bit about the advertising elasticity, that is important to be noted out here. These are the formulas for, again we rework at price elasticity, percentage change in demand upon percentage change in price. Then income elasticity is percentage change in demand will always be there in the numerator, percentage change in the disposable income. And then comes cross elasticity, percentage change in demand for product X upon percentage change in demand for price for product Y, of product Y. And then finally we come to this formula. Of course we can use all these concepts to understand the elasticity of the product in comparison to various variables. Let us talk about this particular elasticity concept. Do you think it is relevant? Do you really think it is relevant when it comes to organizations? See, when we talk about, say, products like FMCG, what is an FMCG product? An FMCG product is a product which has a small shelf life. It comes into the market, it perishes from the market. Like for example, toothpaste, soap, soft drinks, all these items which have a small shelf life, milk, curd, all these items are known as fast moving consumer goods in management studies. Okay, then there are other products like what we term as consumer durables. Okay, now these consumer durables are the products like refrigerators, ACs, TVs, which are once in a while we buy it and we use it for a longer period. Okay. Now when we talk about say FMCG product, why do you think that when we all know about Pepsi, Cola, this, that, there are so many big ads in the let us talk about television, where we have endorsers like Shah Rukh Khan, Ravina, this, that, they're all coming and endorsing the products, charging crores of rupees to the organization, when as consumers we already know about it. Why do you think companies have to spend? The reason is companies have to spend on FMCG products because they have to put the name of the brand in the minds of the consumers. The reason being, if I go to an outlet where soft drinks are being sold, if I don't have in my mind that I have to drink Pepsi, I will find any other thing and pick it up and use it. I will not take more than 10 seconds to decide it. So that is the reason organizations have to continuously on regular basis hammer the minds of the consumers. Okay, they have to put the names of the brands in the minds of the consumers. I go to a shop, I'll buy Lux because it is in my mind, that has been set by the organization. To keep on continuously doing it, organizations need to keep on advertising. Sometimes the advertisements are catchy, glamorous, they can be at times nonsense also, but that nonsense may attract you. It might attract you to the product itself. So we can say FMCG products are heavily dependent on the advertising, because organizations need to continuously maintain their brand images in the minds of the consumers. That is one part. So advertisements become important, that is number one, and they become strategic. But only the thing is that these advertisements might cost cost a good lot of money to the organizations. They need to be aggressive on their advertising elasticity. The reason being, if every penny that they are spending, they need to work out whether there is a return on investment or not, because advertisements are cost to the organization, cost to the company. So what is the advertising elasticity? If they keep on calculating it, possibly they are able to analyze, because even advertisements have a saturation point. If you advertise more than a saturation point, it is no point. You are unnecessarily putting money into advertisement rather than putting money into some other thing, strategies, better quality product or something like that. So that is where we say advertising elasticity becomes a very important criteria when certain decisions to be made. Like every year organizations need to revise on their advertising budget. That is where they can use the data and see to it that how much increase in the budget is actually going to help them. So that is what is advertising elasticity. Advertising budgets, all of us understand, are huge these days. Even for consumer durables, the advertising pattern is totally different. You will find for consumer durables like TV, computers and all, more informative ads, wherein if you find it in print media also, for a computer, if there is an ad, rather than glamorous thing, there will be description, information about its features. And the reason is, we buy consumer durables based on certain decisions, where we analyze alternatives, we take more long duration. हमको अगर कंप्यूटर खरीदना है तो हम 1 महीना लगाएंगे, and we will go to the information. So advertisements are slightly different when it comes to if we have to compare it with FMCG. But the underline is advertisements are important. That is where organizations need to be very aggressive on advertising elasticity these days. Okay, so is this clear? Is this clear, everybody? Not always positive, not always positive. After the saturation point of advertisement, if you advertise more, then it will have no impact. So not necessarily that advertising elasticity is always positive. Okay, so with this note about elasticity, I am going to end this session about elasticity. I'll take a 10 minutes break now, and then I'm going to start off your another chapter, that is production. I still have nearly 45 to 50 minutes to go, so I will be now taking on your yes, ideally it should be, absolutely correct, Ritesh. So now sit back for some time, some 10 minutes time. Meanwhile, from your books, if you have it, I am going to give you a case study to read, assuming that all of you have it. Come to chapter number 6. It's a beautiful chapter, very nice chapter. I just love teaching this chapter. That is the production. Read this case study number. There is a caselet that is given. Just give me one moment. Let me see if there is a better one to go for. Yeah, page number 120, everybody. Diminishing returns in farm experiments. While I'll take a break for another 10 minutes, you all can read it, and I will upload my presentation also. Please read this figure 6.18, diminishing returns in corn production. That is what is this this caselet all about. Read, all of you. Page number 120. Please start reading. So a little bit glimpse about the production part. Okay, from our discussion about total revenue, we concluded that organization should be able to make out that as per their demand, how many units have to be produced, right? Because if the number of units that are being produced in an organizations are not optimized, then there will be no economics along with, because economics is all about optimum utilization of resources, optimum production, optimum cost, minimum cost. That is what is economics all about. Demand should be accurately analyzed. That is what is economics all about. So number one, we are going to analyze this chapter from the optimization point of view. We will be not going deep into that what is production, how production takes place in an organization, what are the standard strategies that are adopted in production, that is ISO and all, what are the techniques of production. We are not going to discuss that. We are going to discuss in this chapter that how production can be optimized based on various analysis. So that is, please be clear in your mind. There is a separate subject related to production in your semester number 2, which is production planning and control, which is entirely different from what we are going to learn here. Because again, I am telling you that here production we are going to read from the optimization or economic point of view. Okay, so we will be taking a very different angle we will be taking a very different angle together here. Just to repeat, if you have not heard about what I was saying, see, we will not be going deep into the processes of production. Rather than that, here in production as a chapter, we will be analyzing the economic part of it. In production as a chapter, we will be basically covering two basic portions or basic divisions. One is law of variable returns, and second is ISO cost and ISO quant analysis. So these are the two broad analysis that we will be understanding after we cover up this chapter. Okay, now production function, I think we have already done. Okay, Tanjit, I can see your responses. A good response to give about total production. This case study was just to get you through the concept of production that we are going to use. Basically, we are going to study in this chapter, as I already told you, these two basic topics. One is law of variable returns and second is isocost and isoquant analysis. Now, the chapter scheme is that we will take into consideration short run production function, what happens in a short run scenario when the production has to change, what happens to a production scenario when two inputs have to change, so on so forth. Now, to get closer to what is the difference between short term and long term, I will give you a small situation wherein you have to identify variable inputs and fixed inputs for me, because as I have already told you that we are going to take into consideration production function for this chapter. Production function is that total output is equal to function of input. Either it can be one input or there can be many inputs that are involved in the production process. So basically we are going to build this entire chapter on production function. Please do not get confused. Till now we were talking about price and demand. Don't confuse it with production. In production we are only going to take into consideration two variables, production and input. Output and input, that is what we are going to use. Do not get confused please with price, demand, so on so forth. We have done that, we are through with it. We are into another chapter with different variables. Now the question to you is that we all remember our college days. We all have been to colleges and we all know how a college works. Now suppose a college management decides to increase the capacity of the college, let us say 5 extra students in every class and section. Okay, the question is very simple. What all inputs are required to be changed and what all inputs can remain constant? A very simple question to ask you all. What all are the inputs that are required to be changed and what all are the inputs that can remain same in this scenario if you have to add 5 additional students in every class? That is the question. Are you all getting my question? Okay, teacher should remain same. Okay, so you can say there are some inputs. Yes, what all should change? Not classroom space can more or less remain same. Maybe the number of chairs, number of books in the library, then more computers to be added to the infrastructure already existing. Teachers can remain same because extra 5 students in every class will not have a burden much on the academics as such. Sorry, yeah, fees can also, that is the price part, we have left it aside. Now we are into inputs and output. Okay, what else? Profit will increase, that is another concept. Only talk about inputs and outputs right now. What else should remain constant? What should be variable? What can change and what not? Exam forms, more maybe more stationery that is required, more number of books in the library, more water filter if you want, then possibly more computers in the entire campus, that is there. So by adding few variable inputs in the same campus, the same building, so building remains same and let us say number of teachers remains same. Okay, we change little bit of variable input, little bit of inputs, and we will be able to bring in the change. Am I right? How can raw material and manpower cost change, Sanjay, if we assume that the number of teachers and number of accountants in the college remain the same? Okay, so what all is a fixed cost and what all is a variable cost in this? Fixed inputs, not the cost, I'm wrong. What all are the fixed inputs and what all are the variable inputs? Hmm. Hmm. Classroom and teachers, absolutely correct, Tanjeet. And rest all, which we have identified as chairs, tables, books, computers, more number of classes, more stationery, whatever is coming to my mind, that is all what we term as variable inputs. Okay, now another situation, if I give you that, if the college management takes the permission from AICTE and plans to double the capacity, what all changes have to be brought in terms of inputs? What all changes have to be brought in terms of inputs if the college management decides to double the capacity? Yes. Yes, number of teachers have to increase, and the building also has to, a building infrastructure also has to be built up. Okay, everything. Very good answer, Shushant. So there is a difference between this short term and long run case. The reason is, if we have to increase the capacity by margins, okay, we can only keep on increasing some inputs and some inputs can remain fixed. So we say in short run scenario, we have some inputs as variable inputs and rest of the inputs as fixed inputs. Whereas if we talk about long run scenarios, there what happens is all the inputs are variable inputs. There is no concept of fixed inputs in long run. If the college has to double the capacity, it cannot be done in weeks or months time. It will take longer duration, an year or so. Okay, plus inputs, there is no concept of fixed inputs. Most of the all of the inputs in this case will be what we term as variable inputs. Okay, so that is the difference between short run and long run. In this case, in this chapter, we are going to see both the cases. What happens when organizations change their production in short term, what happens to them when they change their capacity levels in long term scenarios. So this chapter I have divided into short term and long term. As you can see, in short term also I have subdivided it into two parts. First portion that we are going to analyze today is what happens to the scenario when output changes with a function of only one input and rest of the inputs remain constant, fixed. Only one variable input, when it changes, what happens to the output levels? That will bring us closer to what we term as law of variable proportions. In the second portion, we are going to analyze what happens to output when output changes, when when there are two inputs that are taken into consideration. Okay, for that we are going to study isocost and isocont, and last not the least is long term production function. Okay, so now I am going to zoom into total production is equal to function of one input. Is it clear, everybody? Is it clear, everybody? Give me your responses, then I'm going to move ahead. This is what is production. You all can read. It's a process by which tangible and intangible inputs or factors of production, land, labor, capital, etc. are converted or transformed into useful, tangible or intangible output. A production function refers to the functional relationship under the given technology, physical rates of inputs, output of a firm per unit time. These are all the factors which can affect production. So we can say output depends on technology. Okay, inputs, output of a firm per unit time. All these are the factors on which the production depends. Economists have classified inputs at labor, land, capital, etc. They are all measured per unit time, so we will be using this per unit time thing out here in all the concepts that we arrive at. Per unit time we will be taking into minds concept of fixed and variable inputs. A fixed input is one whose quantity remains constant for a certain level of output. A variable input, we have already done this with an example of college. I think you can read it and understand it. Short run refers to a period of time in which the supply of certain inputs is fixed, rest of the inputs remain variable, and of course long run we have all the inputs as fixed. We all can understand it. Okay, now I will zoom into the the production function where I'll only consider one input change. Okay, a similar example you have already done for this corn thing. Okay, now in this example output is for the product corn, and what is the input that they have talked about? What is the input that they have talked about in the case study? Okay, labor, and output is fertilizer or corn? Sorry, input is labor or phosphorus? Yeah, you tell me from the case study what is output and what is input first. What is output? Output is corn and the input is, or let us say fertilizers. Okay, so output is the levels of corn, the quantity of corn, and the input is fertilizer. This basically has been studied taking into consideration what is the impact of fertilizers when you only change fertilizers to a given set of fixed inputs. What is the impact? Initially the output might grow, then it will reach a saturation point because fixed inputs have their own capacity to absorb this input, that is fertilizer, and after that if you add more fertilizer to it, it will result in a negative return. That is what is the case study all about. Is the case study clear to you, everybody? Output is corn, input is fertilizer, that has been discussed in the case study. Now based on this case study where you have seen that corn and fertilizer, how do they behave, I will talk about two different variables where I will say L for labor and Q is the quantity of any product or any agricultural product. Let us say rice here. Okay, now what is the meaning of this equation that is I have given you on the slide? Can you explain? This equation is Q is equal to 20L plus 10L square minus L cube. What is it signifying? Anybody in the class? What is this table signifying? L will stands for labor and Q will stand for quantity of rice. This, what is this equation giving me? See this equation, yes, this equation is giving me the exact relationship between quantity and labor, output and labor. And in my first session I have already indicated to you that these equations are a result of correlation and regression analysis which economists based on the data have come forth with. Okay. Yes, this equation is for a particular set of data only. Okay, it could be any set of data that this equation has been made, and this equation is a result of correlation and regression analysis that has been applied by economists when they studied a certain pattern or certain data. So this is highly situational. It is not a standard equation that it is applicable everywhere. It pertains to a certain data. So we are going to do a reverse process. With the help of this equation, we are going to build on the data. Okay, yes, where Q depends on fixed plus variables, but column, here I am saying that I am only using this case, that what happens to output levels when only one input labor changes and rest of the inputs remain fixed, like fertilizers, seeds, the size of land, other equipments required to produce the product. Everything else remains the same. What happens to a situation when we change only labor? Now, to understand this, first let us view this thing conceptually, because already all of you have read a case study also. In that, I just wanted to signify these equations are a result of correlation and regression analysis that has been done by some economist on some data. Another thing is that conceptually all of us can understand. Suppose there is a field with you. Field, we all understand, a farmland, which is the size of the room that you are sitting in. Okay, in that farm, okay, you have certain other fixed inputs like the equipments, you can say the seeds, the fertilizers, the soil. Okay, labor will change. Labor is changing here, na? So some of the inputs are same, fixed hai. Only I say that to my piece of land, per unit time, please remember we are studying this per unit time. Per unit time, what is happening to the production level? If I add my first labor to it, there will be some production that will be done. Okay. What will happen to the situation if we add second labor to it? What will happen to your field or to your farm when you add second labor? No, I am asking you, first labor will produce something. What happens when I add second labor? Increase in production. Just remember, the size of your field is the room size, okay, that we are sitting in. Add to it another labor, what will happen? Third labor, what will happen? Okay, you add fourth labor, what will happen? Sorry, this is the size of the room. So some people say production might increase. It is due to we are sitting in different room sizes. We will have a different story to talk about. Okay, now the concept that we can understand is that when we will add, each additional labor will initially increase the production. It will reach to maximum, and then when we add more number of labors, rather than the output going up, it might come down, because fixed inputs remain same. The same old story that you have done for corn and fertilizers. Now this overall impact is known as law of variable proportions. To understand this law of variable proportions, there are certain assumptions that we have, which makes it more theoretical also. Please keep this thing in mind. The technology remains same, inputs are of the same skill. if we assume that labor only changes and output is dependent on it, we assume that skill sets of the labor remain the same, and all other variable factors are homogeneous, they remain the same. All other variable factors remain the same. Based on this analysis, we are going to use these concept: total output, that is the total product; average product, total product upon Q. What can be marginal product? What can be marginal product? Just now I told you about what is marginal revenue. So what can be marginal product? What can be marginal product? That is my question to you guys. Assuming that production function is TP, total production is a function of input. What is marginal product? No, that is the formula. I am asking you about the concept. Change in what? Input? Got it. Yes. Correct. So what is marginal product here? Yes, very good, Sunil. Extra production due to increase in 1 unit of labor. Okay, so we can say marginal product, if we use the same concept, the same logic, whenever there is extra input added to a production process, the change in the output is what we term as marginal product. Is it clear, everybody? Is it clear, everybody? Okay, now there is one request to you all. Write down this equation in your notebooks. A small request: write down this equation. We will be using this later on. Write down this equation in your notebooks. Now, with the help of this equation, can I calculate for every unit of labor TP, total product? Total product is nothing but the quantity. Can I do this? So for this equation, I have calculated TP here. Is TP clear to you guys? How do I calculate? I put L as 1. I calculate TP. That is 29. Then I keep L as 2. I calculate TP, total product, that is 72. Is first two columns clear to you guys? What is average product? Average product is nothing but, as you can see, TP upon quantity. Okay, so on similar basis, we can calculate average product also, that is 29 upon 1, 72 upon 2, 133 upon 3, 176 upon 4, so on and so forth. Is AP column clear to you? Yes, you are correct. I have written it wrongly. Just to check on you guys whether you are attentive or not, it is wrongly written. Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Okay. So how do I calculate marginal product here? How do I calculate marginal product here? A very simple analysis here. See, when I am already having my labor as 1, total production is 29. Okay, when I add extra labor, my number of workers goes to 2 and my output level goes to 72. So my marginal product against second worker will be 72 minus 29. Against third worker it will be 133 minus 72. Then when I add another to the third worker, it goes to 176. It comes to 153. So we are just, yes, minus, not the labor. Difference between TP minus extra labor. Okay, you can say that, Tanjit. Absolutely correct. Is this graph clear? Oh, sorry, is this table clear to everybody? Now, with the help of this table, when you are going to plot a graphical representation between, is this table clear to everybody? Okay, now based on this table, okay, if I am going to make a graphical representation that is given in your page number, I'll just let you know, where I will what variables I will be using will be total product, marginal product, and average product on y axis, and labor, that is the input, on x axis. Please remember, here labor is the independent variable, output is the dependent variable. Output depends on input. ठीक है? When I am going to plot the graphical, yes, page number 122, the graph will look something similar to what has been drawn in figure number, no, come to page number, sorry, come to page number 123, figure 6.2. This is also correct. Come to figure 6.2. When I'm going to plot the graphical representation, it will be something like this. Just have a look at this. This graphical plot is known as law of variable returns. It is something like this, of course not correctly drawn out here on the whiteboard, but when you are going to draw this graph, this will be something like this. Have a look at it. Now this graph has been divided, as you can see, into stage 1, stage 2 and stage 3. Can you see this? Page number 123, I am asking you guys. This is the graph that you will be, this graphical plot is known as law of variable proportions, or law of variable returns to scale. There is something else in the data that I will be discussing right now, which will lead us to something which is known as increasing and decreasing returns to scale. What is returns to scale, and how you can see increasing returns and decreasing returns in the same graph. Okay, so to understand the increasing and the decreasing returns, I am again displaying the table that I had given previously, and we will now, both are correct, Gauri, page 122 and 123, these are similar graphical representations. See, all of you just now focus on this table, please. Okay, you are focusing now in this table. Okay, what you are supposed to do for me as an exercise, I will give you some 5-10 minutes for it, and then we will wind up also. You have to calculate the percentage change in workers, like 1 to 2, the percentage change in workers is 100, and what is the percentage change in the output. Okay, in with respect to that, from 29 to 70, what is the percentage change? So you have to calculate all the percentage changes for me in workers and output. 1 to 2, what is the percentage change? 2 to 3, what is the percentage change? 3 to 4, what is the percentage change? For all the rows, you have to calculate the percentage change for me. You can do that, take 5-10 minutes. It is a very important data that we will be coming to, which will reflect on what is returns to scale, and then we are going to analyze this graph. So do it as an exercise for next 10 minutes. All the 10 values that are there on the table, just do it as an exercise. This data is different from what is given in your box, so please use this data which is available for everybody. So you have to make a table in your notebooks and calculate the percentage changes in the workers and total product only. Don't go to marginal product and average product. Okay, now the case where percentage change of output is more than the percentage change in the input, that is known as increasing returns to scale. Okay, the meaning of increasing returns to scale, which is always desirable also for organizations, it is always desirable that by whatever percentage they increase their output, if output changes more than that, it leads to it is indicative of better productivity also. Simply, that is known as increasing returns to scale. If this is increasing returns to scale, what can be decreasing returns to scale? What can be decreasing returns to scale? This is my question to you guys. No, I'll tell you in your table. It is when the percentage change in the worker is 20%, output is changing by 8%. Can you see this? When your workers level is 6 workers, then when input is changing by 20%, output is changing by 8%. This situation is known as decreasing returns to scale. Is it clear? Is it clear? This is very important actually. I am Asim, not talking about change. I am talking about percentage change. Please do not get confused. When percentage change in output is more than percentage change in input, this situation is known as increasing returns to scale. Okay, percentage change in output is more than the percentage change in input, it is known as increasing returns to scale. What is decreasing returns to scale? It is just the reverse. Percentage change in the output is less than the percentage change in the input, that is decreasing returns to scale. What can be constant returns to scale? So increasing returns means output is increasing, input is also increasing, but at an increasing rate, output is increasing. Decreasing rate also means input is increasing, output is increasing, but at a lesser rate. Okay, constant returns means with whatever percentage your input goes up, the same percentage change output is found in same percentage change is found in output. What can be diminishing returns to scale? Do not get confused between decreasing and diminishing. What can be diminishing returns to scale? What can be diminishing returns to scale? What can be diminishing returns to scale? I am waiting for your responses. Yes, when the output diminishing returns to scale, what happens is input increases and output decreases. So when we observe this data, we will find out here these are laws of returns to scale: increasing returns, decreasing returns, constant returns. Just have a look at it. Okay, and diminishing returns to scale. Is it clear? Is it clear? The difference between decreasing and diminishing is clear to everybody. This is very important for you to know what is the difference between diminishing and decreasing. Okay, see this graphical representation that we have done for law of diminishing returns to scale. It says that when we, now listen to me very carefully, when we add one input, okay, variable input, keeping rest all the inputs as fixed input, initially we find that there is an increasing returns to scale, then we find that there is decreasing returns to scale. It reaches the top where at some point of quantity levels you will find constant returns to scale, and then there is diminishing returns to scale. That when we increase the output levels, input levels, the output comes down. That is the reason this graphical presentation is also known as law of diminishing returns, because initially, again I am repeating, you will find there is an increasing returns to scale, then there is decreasing returns to scale, then there is constant returns to scale, and then there is diminishing returns to scale in the same graph that we have observed in page number 123. Okay, so with this discussion today I am ending my session. Don't worry, we are going to again do this graphical representation. We are going to analyze this and then move on to the next portion of the chapter, that is isocost and isoquant. I am now tired, and at this point of time I should say sorry for all the technical hiccups, but we should take the positive things into our consideration, that what have we learned, what is the knowledge that we have gained about economics, how far we were able to utilize the time that we interacted. I think if we take it positively, there is a learning that has happened today. So with this note, I am winding up the session today, and I will be continuing with the same topic next week. I just want you all to at least have a relaxed Sunday morning, so that you all can gear up yourself for the Monday, the next week that is coming. And again I am repeating, sorry for the inconvenience caused, but again taking it positively, we have had a quality time of learning also. Okay, so that is all for today.